What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Summer Cup Great League Edition once again, and the team we're going to be taking a look at today is TOEDSCRUEL, Dunsparce, and EMPOLEON. Now this was a team in my top teams video that I wanted to showcase, but I didn't really have the means to showcase because all of the TOEDSCRUEL that I caught were absolutely atrocious IVs. That said, I ended up biting the bullet and building one anyways, so today we're going to be taking a look at this team, and the core between TOEDSCRUEL and EMPOLEON is so strong that I had to show it off in this Summer Cup. So without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Alright, into the first match we have TOEDSCRUEL into Charizard. Now this could not be a worse lead, but we have two better answers in the back, so we're going to pivot into the Dunsparce. Dunsparce will be answered with a Magnezone. Now Magnezone is by no means an answer to a Dunsparce up energy. They will of course have to full send the Wild Charge in order to pick up the knockout, so I will end up committing the shield, and they end up full sending the Wild Charge, which is nice because now I can go for a Drill Run, and Drill Run from this range, it's double super effective. It would pick up the knockout unless my opponent commits the shield, which they do. At this point, I'm like, all right, I've grabbed both shields. I should be able to win this game with the EMPOLEON, but then instead, my opponent baits with a Mirror Shot, and then they come in with Kingdra to get some extra farm. But now in comes the TOEDSCRUEL because I need to align my EMPOLEON on that Charizard, especially with an energy lead. So that Swift does come through. It doesn't pick up the knockout. I'm not committing any shields on my TOEDSCRUEL. We end up getting the full farm down. Back in comes the Magnezone. Magnezone going for triple resisted volts, which just gets farmed down with 3 Mud Slaps, and they just resign the match. They were over it. They didn't even want to see the EMPOLEON on the back, so we are able to take that win. Okay, good lead in the next match. We've got TOEDSCRUEL into Toxapex. The opponent is going to save a switch into a Furret. I'm going to throw 3 Mud Slaps and then pivot into my EMPOLEON. I was trying to go for a Swift catch, but I'm unsuccessful, which means the opponent will be able to go for a neutral Trailblaze, but I can live that from the Furret pretty comfortably. I now will go for the Hydro Cannon one turn before they're able to make it to another Trailblaze, and Hydro Cannon from this range actually grabs a shield from my opponent, and they will fire off energy right before I make it to Hydro Cannon number 2, but I will commit the shield here because I want to maintain switch if I can. So I throw one more Metal Sound, and now I will look to pick up the knockout with the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon from this range grabs a second shield from my opponent. So my opponent has flip switch here, but they do not know that that actually doesn't really matter all that much. I'm assuming they have a good answer to TOEDSCRUEL in the back, so I'm basically just going to sacrifice it here. I'm going to let them connect with a charge move, and then I'm going to come in with my Dunsparce, because my Dunsparce with an energy lead will do just fine into that TOEDSCRUEL, that Toxapex in the back. We end up sniping, getting a rollout farm down. What is that Pokemon in the back is the question, and no, it's a Torterra, and unfortunately for me, Torterra is a complete wall to energy from Dunsparce, so I will go for the harder hitting Drill Run, but both of my charge moves are non-stab that it's basically no way to win this matchup, even though like my opponent has flip switch and this pretty much seals the game for me. The question is, can I get to a charge move before they're able to pick up the knockout? The answer is no. They will throw right before I get there. I put up a shield at the very last second, and now I'm going to pivot into my TOEDSCRUEL. The switch ends up not going through, which is pretty unfortunate, but now it does, allowing me to come in with my TOEDSCRUEL, and this is part of the reason I'm running Earth Power for coverage. It's mostly for the Fortress matchup, but that way I'm not completely walled, but having Earth Power here is extremely nice. We also get the defense wall. The opponent, not willing to commit to the farm down, ends up throwing their energy. Brian does pick up the knockout, but now back in comes the Dunsparce, and all I have to do is make it to back-to-back drill runs because the Torterra is not at a second charge move. Torterra, of course, does hit hard with the Frenzy Plant and the Mud Slaps, but they do not generate energy very quickly. The second drill run picks up the knockout on the Torterra, and somehow, some way, we were able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, we've got Raikou on the lead. Now, this is a fantastic lead. The opponent is going to save switch into a Kingdra, and Kingdra will be hit with the EMPOLEON. And this is a fantastic matchup for the EMPOLEON because we are a complete wall to energy from the Kingdra, and we do actually outpace as well. I mean, they can go straight Swift, but they're not going to gain any ground. But the opponent is actually on Octazooka, maybe fishing for that attack debuff. But no attack debuff comes through, and we're able to outpace because Octazooka is just a little bit slower than Swift, allowing me to get Drill Peck number 2. That picks up the knockout. Back in comes the Raikou. Raikou now will be hit with the Hydro Cannon, and Hydro Cannon on a very glassy Pokemon will do some very solid chip. It puts them into the red health range, but they are able to hang on. And in the back is Decidueye, and it's an astonished Decidueye at that, which is absolutely huge. They farm up to the Frenzy Plant, so I will respect it here, not expecting them to bait, and they do end up full send. descending, which is nice because now I can go for a rock slide and I can outpace to a second charge move. The opponent, of course, can overfarm pretty significantly here after I throw this charge move and then look to pick up the knockout with the frenzy, but that is okay because once I grab this second shield from my opponent, I know that this game is over. Yes, I am completely walled on TOEDSCRUEL, and it would be even worse if I was on wrap, but Decidueye is so glassy that it does not matter. I watch for the catch. The opponent ends up going for the snipe after waiting the turn. I end up committing the shield in case I need that energy later on. Back in comes the TOEDSCRUEL. TOEDSCRUEL gets the full farm down. I'm going to commit to the Earth Power or force them to throw their energy. The opponent does not throw any energy. I'm able to make it to the Earth Power, and Earth Power actually picks up the knockout on the Decidueye, and we are able to take that win. Into next match, we've got mirror leads, TOEDSCRUEL into TOEDSCRUEL. I can only imagine I win this CMP matchup, but unfortunately, I had a little bit of lag at the beginning, so I actually don't get an extra fast move in where I should. So the opponent has an entire extra fast move on me, allowing them to get to the wrap, which means they're going to be able to get to back-to-back wraps at the same time I get to back-to-back seed bombs. And unfortunately, that is not how the game is supposed to work. I do end up winning CMP because of that 6th attack, but unfortunately for me, losing an entire mud slap I think is going to cost me this lead matchup. They will go for a second wrap, but with my defense lowered, actually it's just a seed bomb, but either way, they're going to get the full farm down. They are significantly healthier than we are. In comes the Dunsparce. They have a Dunsparce of their own, but they should be one turn behind because they switched after picking up the knockout. But no, once again, my opponent is not a turn behind for some reason. I have no idea what's going on. Yes, they would get a 0-turn switch after throwing a charge move, but not when it picks up the knockout, as I've learned. So very strange. My opponent has 2 extra fast moves in this matchup that they should not have, and when it's 3 turns versus 3 turns in both these matchups, these make a massive difference. And I can only imagine my opponent is also running something very similar to my line. I'm guessing it's just another EMPOLEON in the back. The opponent ends up catching onto their TOEDSCRUEL, but Rock Slide picks up the knockout. I went for the Rock Slide in case they went for the catch. In comes a Blastoise in the back, so not exactly an EMPOLEON, but a very similar team to the one that we're running. And now in comes the EMPOLEON. EMPOLEON, a complete wall to energy. I know I can survive 1 Hydro Cannon, so I will let it go. And it actually looks like I can survive 2 pretty comfortably, especially because these rollouts are also resisted. I'm now able to make it to Drill Peck number 1, and this will do some pretty solid chip unless the opponent commits the shield, and they do end up committing the shield. And now I basically just have to start watching for a catch here. If my opponent goes for a catch, I could be in a difficult situation. I do end up putting up the first shield. The opponent is able to make it to another Hydro Cannon, but this time I will just let it go. I know the Dunsparce does not have enough energy to make it to another charge move, so all I'm really doing is I'm watching for a catch as I'm going for these charge moves. Drill Peck is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. They do end up throwing on alignment, but that is okay because as long as I watch that next rollout go through, I know this game is over. But I end up putting up the shield. I know they had, I guess they had a move banked on the Dunsparce. We catch the drill run onto my EMPOLEON where it is onto my Dunsparce, which is 1 HP, and now we can pick up the knockout with the Hydro Cannon, and we still should be able to outpace the Blastoise on 1 HP, making it to the Drill Peck. That catch was absolutely crucial to winning this game. Drill Peck picks up the knockout on the Blastoise, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got TOEDSCRUEL into Scizor. Now this is a pretty neutral lead. Both of our fast moves doing pretty meaningful damage, and unfortunately because I'm not on wrap, I can't actually lower their defense and continue to farm them down. I will end up no shielding the Night Slash here or the Trailblaze. They farmed up to both, but it is just the Night Slash. I now will look to pick up the knockout with the Earth Power in case my opponent decides to no shield, and my opponent actually lets that go. So winning switch is absolutely huge here, and now it's just about what is in the back. It's a Furret, so Furret will be able to get the full Sucker Punch farm down, but now I can align my Dunsparce. Dunsparce will be hit with a Swift here, but Swift is very non-threatening. This is a very bulky Pokemon against a very bulky Pokemon, so these charge moves are not going to be doing all that much. That said, I am able to make it to Drill Run number 1 before they're able to make it to Swift number 2, and that puts them into the yellow health range, threatening a knockout on Drill Run number 2. So they will end up going for a Swift here, but the only way I outpace is if I throw on alignment, so I will end up throwing on alignment here. The opponent has to make a decision here. Are they willing to commit the shield, or are they going to let this go? They end up letting it go. They live it on 1 HP, so instead I pivot into my EMPOLEON, I catch the Swift where it is resisted, and in the back is Azumarill, which means this game is over. Azumarill has a massive stat product advantage, but when they are as walled as they are in this matchup, this game is over, especially because I believe this is only enough for, actually, no, I think it is enough for a play rough, so I will respect it. But no, it is the double resisted Ice Beam bait. And at this point, I mean, I just have such a pacing advantage in this matchup that I don't really need to be no shielding these baits. Although that drill pack does very little damage to the Azumarill. You would not believe that this is a buffed charge move. Yes, this is the non-Shadow Empoleon, but we do end up grabbing the final shield from the opponent. So what I'm going to do here is, because I know I'm somewhat close to a charge move on the Dunsparce, I'm just going to stay in. I'm going to force them to throw their energy. They're probably going to overfarm expecting a catch, and when no catch comes through, they might actually let me get to another charge move. So I'm just going to stay in, force them to throw their energy. The opponent doesn't throw. I lag when I get to the charge move. Nothing happens for 2 whole turns. They're able to get the bubble and the play rough through to pick up the knockout, and now it's a race, a bubble versus rollout. But fortunately, rollout picks up the knockout, and we are able to take that win despite the lag, which almost cost us the game. Into the next match, we've got TOEDSCRUEL into Magcargo. This is a pretty good lead. The opponent safe switches into an Azumarill, and Azumarill will be hit with the Empoleon. Empoleon, of course, a complete wall to energy, as we just saw in that previous matchup. And look at how comfortably we can actually live these play roughs. In a situation where we don't really need to be shielding everything, we can no-shield the play roughs, and that does very little damage. And that's part of the reason I'm running the non-shadow, is Empoleon has such great typing, and it's kind of a shame that it has to shield up resisted charge moves when you're using the shadow, which is why I like using the non-shadow. Hydro Cannon, of course, doesn't hit as hard and is not as threatening, but it usually takes 2 to pick up a knockout anyways on the majority of Pokemon. That said, the opponent can't even get to a full farm down here before I'm able to make it to back-to-back drill runs. So if they want to shield this up, they're going to have to shield up too, so they end up letting that go. Back in comes the Magcargo. Magcargo gets the Incinerate farm down, but now we have the alignment that we want. In comes the TOEDSCRUEL. TOEDSCRUEL unable to get to an Earth Power before they're able to get to a charge move. So I will just settle for the Seed Bomb. This is still neutral damage because it's super effective on rock, but resisted on fire. I will now commit the shield because I don't yet know what is in the back. They end up going for the Rock Tomb bait, which is really unfortunate. And in the back, it's a Trevenant. So pretty similar to a team we saw in the past, but with Decidueye. This one is running Trevenant, and Trevenant did get a rework this season with Seed Bomb, of course, being a little bit cheaper, which means it does get there in straight 5 Shadow Claws, but that does not matter when Shadow Claw is resisted, and it takes more than 1 Seed Bomb to pick up the knockout here. So unfortunately for my opponent, they just have nowhere to go. They will end up no shielding the rock slide. I know I can live another Seed Bomb here, so I probably will just let this go as well, and they have no ability to farm me down. So I'm just going to stay in this matchup, force them to throw their energy. I'm now going to commit the shield, and now I just have to watch for the pivot and the catch from my opponent. There is the pivot into the Magcargo. I end up going for the Rock Slide right away so that I don't even take that Incinerate damage. Back in comes the Trevenant, and in order to pick up the knockout here, they're going to have to throw, and if they don't, I'm going to pivot into my TOEDSCRUEL, get to a Seed Bomb, and Seed Bomb does grab the final shield from my opponent. We get the Mud Sap farm down, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, we've got TOEDSCRUEL into Poliwrath, so a Pokemon that we showcased on a previous team. That said, I can outpace here if I go for the Seed Bomb right away. This is only 12 turns as opposed to the, 16 turns that it takes to get to an Icy Wind. I suppose I could have just thrown on good timing then and still outpaced. That said, I'm able to get to Seed Bomb number 2, but the opponent makes a really nice catch onto their Oranguru, getting an entire Confusion Sneak in for free. In comes Empoleon. Empoleon, of course, resisting the confusions, and now I can hopefully Metal sound them down into a range where a Hydro Cannon picks up the knockout. They do go for the Trailblaze, but they just cannot get to enough charge moves before I'm able to get to the Hydro Cannon, and the Hydro Cannon from this range does not pick up the knockout. They get to another charge move. I will have to commit the shield here, but I think I can look for an entire Metal Sound farm down to the opponent. Realizes that, pivots back into their Poliwrath. Poliwrath will be hit with a Drill Peck to grab that shield, and now in comes the TOEDSCRUEL to force their energy. At this point, they should be energy dry, which is good because that means my Dunsparce can actually outpace this Poliwrath because they're back on their 8 cycle. So in comes the Dunsparce. Dunsparce makes it do a charge move. This drill run is is neutral damage. It should pick up the knockout on the Poliwrath, and it does. And in the back is Giraffe Rig. So as long as I don't throw on alignment, then this game should be a win. I know I can live a Psychic Fangs from this range, but I cannot live a Trailblaze. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw one more, and then I pivot into my Empoleon, get the catch. Is it the Trailblaze catch? That would be absolutely massive. No, it's a Psychic Fangs, which means the opponent is 1 away. but for some reason I have a 3-turn move, they have a 4-turn move, and they outpace me to the charge move. This should have been a win, but unfortunately, once again, the game is just too laggy, and we do end up losing that game despite having the winning matchup. I had a Dunsparce with 0-turn switch. It had it's a 3-turn move to get to my charge move, and they have a 4-turn and then to their charge move. So there's 0 scenarios where they should be able to outpace me there. But unfortunately, the game is just not coded very well. So we do end up losing that game. But into the next match, picking up a good lead of TOEDSCRUEL into Magcargo once again. This opponent pivots into a Credilli. Credilli will be hit with the Empoleon because I have super effective metal sounds. However, I'm quickly learning that this matchup is not as good for the Empoleon as I thought. I can't even get the full farm down after committing a shield, which means I'm forced to go down 2 shields at this matchup when Credilli is weak to steel and takes neutral from my charge move. So that is absolutely crazy. Back in comes the Magcargo, which is a bit of an interesting play for my opponent because now I have double super effective Hydro Cannons coming their way. They end up taking that. In the back is a Ferrothorn. Fortunately, I respond in time, which means I do not throw the resisted charge move. Instead, I go for the Drill Peck, which is neutral damage. The Ferrothorn can't even get to another charge, or can't get to the first charge before I'm able to make it to a Drill Peck, and Drill Peck is going to put them into the yellow health range. Can they get the full farm down? Not before I make it to a 3rd Drill Peck. Empoleon, even though it's debuffed, is putting in the work in this final matchup here. Drill Peck does grab a shield. And now in comes the TOEDSCRUEL. TOEDSCRUEL is in here just to force their energy. And of course, Mudslaps are neutral, so this is not a terrible matchup. I end up going for the catch when they make it to the 2nd charge move, or the 2nd Power Whip. And Power Whip does some decent shit, but it's not enough to 2-shot. I basically just have to watch for a catch here. The opponent ends up going for it, but they do not get it because I held on to my energy. I'm able to come out with back-to-back moves loaded. The opponent realizes they no longer have a win con, so they resign the match. TOEDSCRUEL into Fortress. Now, I don't want to give them the super effective Bug Bite, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot into my Dunsparce, because my thought process here is if I pivot into my Dunsparce, they come in with their response to Dunsparce, and then I come back in with my TOEDSCRUEL to their their Fortress up energy. Their energy is completely walled. Both Rock Tomb and Sand Tomb are resisted, so I'm not worried about taking their charge moves, it's just their fast moves, which is why I pivoted instantly out there. Knowing that if they banked a lot of energy, it would not matter. That said, my save swap is responded to with a Credilli, and Credilli, unfortunately, is just so bulky, and it just has better pacing in this matchup. Or not better pacing, it's very similar pacing, but they will be able to pick up the knockout here. And the question is, where do I go from here? Do I come in Empoleon and get an energy lead, or do I come in with my TOEDSCRUEL? I decided to come in with the Empoleon. I get a massive Metal Sound farm down, coming out with a move loaded, and it's a Kingdra in the back, which means this game is over. We have the energy, we have the alignment that we want, and now I just have to look for these charge moves. I will end up committing the shield here, I imagine, on the Outrage. It is just a swift bait, which is pretty unfortunate, but now I can overfarm a little bit, go for a Drill Peck to pick up the knockout. Is the opponent willing to commit a double shield? They are. Actually, they no shield the first, so that's actually the first shield of the match for my opponent. They end up going for another swift bait, which is really unfortunate. I can't even get the full farm down, so I'm forced to throw my energy here, and Drill Peck will be enough to pick up the knockout. Gonna pivot back into the TOEDSCRUEL because I know that their energy is completely walled, so I'm hoping that these Bug Bites do not add up enough, even with the Sand Tomb debuff. And on my win con, I see it, I think it's just going for the full farm down. I second guess myself. I'm at the back-to-back Seed Bombs, so I'm going to end up throwing my energy. Does that Bug Bite KO? It does, but are they able to pick up the knockout here with either a Sand Tomb or a Rock Tomb? It's going to be close. Rock Tomb connects, it's resisted damage. We hang on, we make it to the Hydro Cannon when the Fortress is on 1 HP, and Hydro Cannon from this range picks up the knockout on the Fortress, and we are able to take that win. But yeah, that is TOEDSCRUEL, Dunsparce, and Empoleon. The team was loads and loads of fun. I don't know if I would recommend it for climbing in this cup, specifically because I've seen a massive rise in both Charizard and Gyarados in the recent days, which just completely shuts down TOEDSCRUEL. And yes, you have 2 better answers to that in the back, but if it's an Ember Charizard, that can actually get really tricky for Empoleon, especially if they're up energy. So just be wary of that. Maybe don't use this team for climbing. This is honestly a team that could be used in the Open Great League as well. It's just a very solid core between the 3 of them, but yeah, that's going to be it from this video. I want to say a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel, Benny Hemlock, Dr. Mustache, Soham Patil, and Eliana, as well as the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitten, Musaju, Noodleman, Speedster, Esteros, Liminal Lagomorph, Tom Spencer, Fascinated Boss, Jamie Finn, CD Slaskus, and Castle. So thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace!